I think I know what you did last night.
Megachurches. Churches, but with a whole lot more PR. Gone are the days when churches were more conservative, and everyone knew everyone. These days, the biggest churches boast members in the tens and hundreds of thousands, and sometimes even millions. You have big pharma and big tech. Well, megachurches are the big church. They've got the budget, the infrastructure, and the reach to pull spellbinding productions and draw people in their droves. So what do you give a church that has everything, went Hollywood, and can match the production output of an indie studio? In this video, we're going over some of the most disturbing scandals that rocked megachurches in the last 35 years. You might want to sit down for this one. It gets pretty chaotic. Starting off, New Life Church. What do you give a pastor who preaches against homosexuality? A meth-slinging gigolo. We don't make the rules. Just ask Ted Haggard. Although Haggard's scandal is by far the least disturbing addition to this list, it caused one of the biggest media frenzies when it came to light. Haggard is the founder and former president of New Life Church, a Methodist fellowship in Colorado Springs. Back in 2006, the church boasted more than 14,000 regular members, and Haggard had significant influence, including being the president of the National Association of Evangelicals. This position offered him a direct route to the White House, and he was a recurring visitor during the Bush administration. While Haggard appeared to be waxing strong in the Christian community, he was also making waves beneath the sheets. The year 2006 was a much different time to be queer, so you can imagine the scandalous press when it turned out that the good old Methodist pastor who preaches against homosexuality had his very own gay gigolo named Mike Jones. Oh, don't take my word for it. Here's a clip of him calling you out, or more credibly, himself.
I think I know what you did last night.
Even better or worse, if you're Haggard or someone close to him, Jones was more than just a sex worker. He was a crystal meth dealer too. As you'd expect, this news spread through the evangelical community like wildfire, and soon Haggard faced staunch ostracization. In a bid to defend himself, the preacher claimed that he had gay tendencies because he was molested as a child. Right. Well, he took a 4-year sabbatical and returned to preaching in 2010 alongside his wife, who stuck by him regardless. But that didn't work, so he moved to selling insurance, a move that also failed. Haggard tried verbal conversion therapy to banish his gay tendencies. Unfortunately, despite pouring 8 years into this straightened machine, the preacher confessed to CBS that he was...
My counselor says I'm a heterosexual with complications, whatever that means.
Right.
For all his shortcomings, Haggard was small time compared to the next guy. Do you know how messed up you have to be dubbed the father of religious sex scandals? Cathedral at Chapel Hill. Nearly a dozen women, if not more, accused Earl Paulk of one form of sexual misdeed up until his death in 2009. Both within and outside his family, he even had an affair that lasted 14 years. Paulk made Diddy sound like a saint, with scandals lasting well over a decade, and some resulting in lawsuits against his church even after his demise. So how did it happen? Well, after founding Chapel Hill Harvester Church in Decatur, Georgia in 1960, he worked as the head pastor until the late 90s. During this time, his position brought him into contact with lots of women, both from the congregation and church staff. Paulk knew this was his influence and reputation that could help him get the better of several women, and he did just that, having sexual relations with anyone that caught his fancy. When the allegations started to pour in, a lot of them were proven true, and settlements were arranged. But what cements Paulk as the father of religious sex scandals is the existence of Donnie Earl Paulk, the current senior pastor of the church. During Earl's lifetime, Donnie was regarded as the former's nephew. However, in light of the founder's sexual scandals, Donnie was made to take a court-ordered DNA test. Turns out that Donnie was in fact Earl's son, meaning Earl had sexual history with his If you think Paulk's legacy ended at his death, you'd be surprised. He had a long-time mentee who took after his mentor. Introducing Bishop Eddie Long, New Birth Missionary Baptist Church.
This is an extremely difficult time. For me, it's an extremely difficult time for my family. It's extremely difficult time for you,
said Bishop Eddie Long, addressing his New Birth Missionary Baptist Church congregation in Georgia. His life had changed in a week. While his mentor preyed on women, Long went the Haggard way. 4 young men, all who claimed Long adopted them as his spiritual sons from their teens, came out accusing him of coercing and seducing them into inappropriate sexual relationships. One of Long's accusers was a 22-year-old member of New Birth in Charlotte named Spencer Legrand, who filed a lawsuit against the Georgia preacher. According to Legrand, Long asked him to go on a trip to Kenya, where the preacher offered to be his dad. Long turned out to be a father from hell because Legrand claimed that he was drugged, after which the preacher engaged in sexual acts with him. Paris, another one of Long's spiritual sons, had this to say about his encounters with the preacher.
I keep the sound of his voice out of my head, and I cannot forget the smell of his cologne, and I cannot forget the way that he made me cry many nights when I drove in his cars on the way home.
However, unlike Ted Haggard, who got kicked out of his church, Long announced to his megachurch of over 30,000 members at the peak of media frenzy that he would not resign from his position as head pastor. The case eventually grew to involve a 5th accuser, a singer who, according to Fox News, was recording songs from the perspective of a bitter lover and had the preacher's name tattooed to his wrist. This 5th figure was Santino Kemp. In the end, Long settled out of court with his accusers. He might as well have branded the word guilty on his forehead. National Baptist Convention USA, Inc. In 1994, Henry Leon, or the Deacon, as he was famously called, was installed as the president of the National Baptist Convention USA, Inc., the largest predominantly black denomination in the United States with about 10 million members. His installation came as no surprise to anyone, given just how popular Lyons was at the time. The man was virtually involved in anything, whether it was raising money for the church or counseling members. It also helped that he was charismatic and God-fearing. Well, maybe not the last part, because only 4 years into his time at the helm, and Lyons was indicted by federal prosecutors for fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, conspiracy, and extortion. The deacon's fall from grace was twice as fast as his ascent to power. To quote one of the greatest philosophers of our time,
"For I beheld Satan, and he fell from heaven like lightning."
At first, when the news broke, Lyons claimed he was innocent and that he was only targeted because of the color of his skin. Funny how quickly he tried to play the victim card when he had no problem defrauding the church. Thankfully, a court sentencing in 1999 helped juggle his memory, and he was slapped with a 5-year sentence for misappropriating more than $4 million from the church. By 2003, he was released on probation and returned to Tampa, Florida, where he began preaching again. I wonder what his sermons were about. Covenant Life Church. 7 years ago, in 2017, Calvary Chapel Church was in the news for a former youth pastor, Nathaniel Morales, who had been convicted in May of that year on the counts of molesting 3 minor boys between 1983 and 1991. One of the accusers, Jeremy Cook, who claims Morales abused him 50 times, had this to say about the preacher.
He had that personality that drew you in, made you trust him. The act was perfect. And yet underneath that, you have a pedophile.
Naturally, the church was quick to distance itself from the ex-employee and state its innocence in the matter. But it wasn't so simple, you see. Morales' colleagues during his time with the Maryland Megachurch, Joshua Harris and Pastor C.J. Mahaney, admitted that they had helped keep his sins under wraps. Mahaney in particular brought even more scrutiny to the case, considering he was also a founder of Sovereign Grace Ministries, which is an association of about 80 churches. When prosecutors dug deeper, they found that this wasn't Mahaney's first rodeo. The pastor's brother-in-law, Grant Layman, confessed in court that Mahaney did not fulfill his moral obligations by notifying authorities. Mahaney himself had been sued 2 years prior to Morales' conviction in 2012 for covering up crimes. Joshua Harris, the other participant in aiding and abetting Morales' crimes, claimed in a sermon in 2013 that he was sexually abused as a child. It does seem like churches, regardless of denominations, are still keeping up with the time-honored traditions of the Catholic Church, sticking to the preachers who take the idea of catching them young far too literally. We have Prestonwood Baptist Church. Before Dateline How to Catch a Predator made its way to the airwaves, Joe Barron was a pioneer of that genre of TV. He was one of 40 ministers presiding over Prestonwood Baptist Church in Plano, Texas, which had over 26,000 members. Barron, ironically, was a marriage counseling pastor and may have taken Jesus' statement, "Suffer little children to come unto me, and forbid them not," a little too seriously. During an internet crackdown on pedophiles, the pastor was caught and arrested in 2008 for soliciting a minor. There was no denying it either, because Barron had driven all the way from Dallas to Bryan, Texas, to allegedly engage in sexual relations with what he expected to be a 13-year-old girl he met online. Unfortunately, the girl turned out to be an undercover law enforcement official. Upon arrest, the police found a webcam and headset and several condoms in his car. Now, is that how Jesus taught you to preach the gospel, Pastor Barron? Gateway Church. There has to be something in the water in Texas, because here's another megachurch from Dallas that caught the news for scandals. Even worse, this happened as recently as June 2024. Robert Morris was accused of child molestation from decades ago, something which he has since admitted to and resigned from his post in the church. The accusations are about Morris's inappropriate sexual behavior with a 12-year-old girl in the 1980s, which is putting it mildly. Morris, the founder of Gateway Church, which is one of the largest megachurches in the United States, with over 100,000 active members and 9 campuses and locations spread across Texas, St. Louis, and Jackson Hole, Wyoming. If that wasn't enough power and influence in Morris's hands, he also became the spiritual advisor to then-President Donald Trump and a member of his Evangelical Advisory Committee in 2016. Morris's accuser, Cindy Clemshire, claimed that the preacher began abusing her in 1982, when she was only 12. Morris was 21 at the time and was a traveling evangelist. He was friends with her family and would stay with Clemishire's family and join them on trips together with his wife and young son. According to Clemishire, Morris's abuse started on Christmas of 1982 and continued for over 4 years in both Texas and Oklahoma. First, he began with inappropriately fondling her privates. Then, as she grew older, moved to intercourse. It wasn't until Clemishire was 16 that she found the courage to open up to her parents. Her father, irate, demanded that Morris quit being a preacher or risk being reported to the authorities. Morris took the deal and stepped away from ministry work in 1984. However, 2 years later, he was back like he never left. And how did he explain this gap year in his resume, you ask? Well, in his 2005 book, From Dream to Destiny, Morris explained that he had a pride problem in his 20s, and that's why the Lord orchestrated the circumstances for me to step out of ministry, he wrote.
Not a great plan.
Word of Faith Fellowship. In terms of sheer volume of lives affected, every other errant church or preacher on the list pales in comparison to the misdeeds of Word of Faith Fellowship. The megachurch located in Spindale, North Carolina, may have an illustrious record of evangelism, but this history is far from spotless. Founded in 1979, the church eventually spread far and wide, which soon involved international audiences. Taking a page out of Jim Jones's book, the branch in Brazil soon started offering its members passage to America. You'd think the New World hadn't already been discovered. An ongoing investigation by the Associated Press revealed that the system ran for more than 2 decades, with immigrants who came through the church finding that life wasn't the bed of roses they were promised. Lacking the resources to thrive in a strange land, the immigrants were pressed into work, or more precisely, slave labor. Children were physically abused, babies were shaken, and the immigrants were generally kept in unsavory conditions, with many calling warehouses home for years. Here's a clip of one of the victims of this system.
And you have to work for them, you have to do everything they tell you to do, because if you don't do that, you're going to go to hell.
The investigation also found that the church was able to get away with this for so long because it had assistant district attorneys among its members who helped coach them on how to evade authorities. For the final entrant on our list, we have the co-founder of Global Destiny Christian Community. Thomas Wesley Weeks III founded Global Destiny Christian Community with his ex-wife, Juanita Bynum, in Washington, D.C. He was many things in his heydays, including a motivational speaker, conference host, author, televangelist, and prophet. But the one part many didn't expect in his laundry list of talents was MMA fighter. Weeks III might never have suited up for Dana White's event, but for a moment in the morning of August 22, 2007, in a hotel parking lot, you could have sworn he was training for a championship belt. What was the beloved pastor doing, you ask? Oh, nothing much. Just beating, stomping, and choking the ever-living daylight out of his wife. Some backstory revealed that the couple had grown estranged over time and decided to meet at the hotel to discuss their union and what of it. Bynum, who thought she was showing up to a hotel, met herself at the pass of Thermopylae. So fierce was the beatdown that Weeks had to be pulled off his ex-wife by a bellman. Once the authorities were called, the preacher pulled an Elijah, disappearing from the scene. Bynum was left battered and bruised with welts on her neck, torso, and face. Naturally, Bynum filed charges against Weeks for aggravated assault and terroristic threats, all of which he denied. However, by March 21, 2008, the court convicted him and slapped him with 3 years of probation, anger management counseling, and 200 hours of non-church community service. As you'd expect, that was the end of their union. Considering their marriage in 2002 was the talk of the town and cost a whopping $1 million, no one could have foreseen it ending 6 years later with bruises, disgrace, and community service. Weeks went on to marry Christina Glenn a year after his convention, while Bynum shocked the Christian world when she admitted to having lesbian affairs over the summer.
I did the drugs. I've been with men. I've been with women. And all of it comes out. And
Are you serious?
Every bit of it. That's my line.
Pretty wild stuff. There have been more scandals against megachurches than what's covered in this video. Beyond the jokes and exposure, you must remember that these scandals affected real people who were unfortunate to know these preachers or attend their churches. It's our hope that this sheds more light on the goings-on in megachurches so you can look out for yourself and not be quick to defend men of God without knowing the facts. Be safe now. But before you go, leave a comment to let us know if you enjoyed the video, and don't forget to leave a like. We have more videos coming your way. Just click on the next one that pops up or check out the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.